Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Read Reads. I'm going to put up a trigger warning on this one, and I think whenever I do a read for this person from now on, I'm just going to go ahead and include it, whether we need it or not. I'm just going to be for safekeeping because I do not edit my videos. So, this is a trigger warning just in case. This story could cover material that may be upsetting to some viewers or readers. This is a disclaimer. This beta read and concrete is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we are doing a beta read and concrete of a chapter from a memoir for No-Ant-5039. Now, in the video I did, the read I did just prior to this for Ant, I had labeled it as chapter, or it was labeled as chapter 9, which actually I'm in here and I can scroll right on back and show you that it says chapter 9 up here. And so I had read it saying chapter 9, chapter 9, chapter 9. And then I got down here and I'm like, oh, this one says chapter 9 as well. What I suspect has happened is in the editing process, Ant has probably moved some things around. And what was once a chapter 9 is now a chapter 8 and one is a chapter 9. So as far as for my clarity, so I can keep up, the dad chapter I have labeled in my videos as chapter 8. I have read several chapters for Ant. I have read chapter 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, and now 8, and this is 9 for public viewing, and chapter 4 was a private read. So I'll include links in the description to all of those. I've decided to start popping up a trigger warning whenever I read for Ant, just in case, so we don't have to worry about things and cover all our bases. If I see any curse words, Ant has color coded them in purple, or anything that might be questionable or worrisome, and so I just kind of skip over them if I feel the need. If I feel like I need to not say them, it's an alert for me. And let's see what else. If you guys have been with me for a while, or if you're new here, welcome. I don't tend to do the like and subscribe and click and all that other stuff because it's not really my style. Like I said before, I don't even edit my videos. I'm just trying to do live reads as I read something for the first time to give you a true reader first impression. So, but however, all that said, I want to express, and I've been meaning to do this, I want to express gratitude and give thanks to everyone who has bought me a cup of coffee. I truly appreciate it, and thank you so much for encouraging me to continue doing beta reads in this unique format. And so with that said, we're going to dive in. Chapter 9, Oblivion, Full Speed Ahead. Now I'm going to note straight off, so we've not actually talked about it, but I know I've noted it in at least, I think, 2 other chapters where sometimes we have like this little kind of, is it a title? Is it a, I'm not really sure what it is. And sometimes we have this, but we don't always have it. And so I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of that yet. I don't know what that's going to be for you, because if it was going to be a chapter title, we'd want it consistently on every single chapter. So I don't know if your goal is to have one, or if this is just like a prompt for you when you're writing to help you set focus. We've not actually dove into that. So I'm just curious. Okay, here we go. To my forever love, formerly Mr. Tender. I missed my turn the first night I came to visit. It was dark, and your little lane was obscured by pride of Madeira and aloe bushes. It was the kind of turn you needed to know was coming, a slow, sharp right off a 55-mile-per-hour stretch. Gravel meandered past the radish field before it turned to dirt. Telephone poles climbed, lackadaisical, up the hill, and the smallest of the falcons, the American kestrel, perched on the line. Kestrels would bob and soar to the next pole, careful to stay a few yards ahead of the car. When the windows were down, and they usually were, the smell of the chaparral induced nostalgia. The iron gate was left open for me to pull right through, revealing the white 2-story home that was anything but modest. Rumor had it that the original owners were growing weed all over the hillside, shielded by a dense perimeter of pine trees and eucalyptus. I overheard you telling my dad that it was constructed in the 1970s, designed with the owner's aging parents in mind. Both levels had their own access, funky kitchens, lavish living spaces, and ocean view bedrooms. The homes were connected by an elevator, and outside there was a storybook-like spiral staircase leading down to the swimming pool. I wonder now what became of the original family after that alleged drug bust. When I met you, the house was divided and rented with 2 tenants downstairs and 3, including yourself, upstairs. The housemates were rarely around. If the walls could talk! Only we started drinking on a Friday night. We wouldn't leave until Sunday. On this particular weekend, you had lined up, and I brought Jameson's, 2/5, and a bag of Lifesaver gummies. It would have been fair to call me reckless back then, but I drew the line at mixing hard drugs. I'm kind of like pausing because I'm wondering, is Jameson spelled with an I or an E? Why am I wondering that? My drinking days are long behind me, so I cannot actually remember. I'm wondering. Random musing. I don't see anything wrong. It's reading beautifully. Going right along. I love your visuals. I love how you set your story up. It's not, it's a memoir, but still, you set up your scene. How's that? You set it up beautifully. I love how you did the Pride of Madeira and the aloe bushes. I like how it's obscured. You just open up beautifully. A sharp right off a 55-mile stretch. Gravel meandered past the radish field. Love it, love it, love it. Telephone poles climbed lackadaisical up the hill. And I love the mention of the kestrels. It's interesting that there's so many of them together, because usually you just kind of see like one on the off, maybe 2. The smell of the chaparral and the nostalgia of the iron gate. Oh, your setting is just stunning. And I even like how you describe the house. Just beautiful opening. Okay, focusing here. Let's get back to it. Which one do you want to start with? I asked, grinning as if there were a bad option. I kind of want that to be were, but that may be personal opinion. There's no grammar flagging on it. If it were me, I would use the word were, but that doesn't mean I'm right either. I think it's personal opinion. We're going to keep going. I'll chop up a line and we can switch gears tomorrow, you said, reaching past me to grab your wallet off the speaker. To the tune of a Lucero song, we kicked off what would be my final bender. We were up most of the night, deep in conversation, and despite conviction, nothing was important enough to remember now, some 5 years later. We'd, another line, rub some dust on the rim of a cigarette, and numb our upper gum while we smoked. Each bump grew closer together, an overzealous sloppiness in our pursuit. You had prepared multiple lines in advance. This makes me laugh now. Wondering if that should have been a period. I'm wondering if this right here should have been a period. I am indecisive. I'm noting that while reading, I contemplated that this could possibly be a period in a new sentence. I'm going to try it again. You have prepared multiple lines in advance. This makes me laugh now, as if we needed to streamline our process for efficiency. It had been 1:00 an hour or 2 ago, and despite the mania, our bodies were running towards emptiness. Okay, so when I read this line, I gave a pause right here after mania. So, again, there's no grammar flagging on it, and I am definitely not the comma goddess, so I did put a pause in here. Okay, let's see. We should try to sleep at some point. Do you think you'd be able to doze off? You asked. Far from it, I said, putting my hand on my heart, as if I could will it to slow down. Will it to slow down. Okay, far from it, I said, putting my hand on my heart, as if I could will it to slow down. I'll close my eyes at least. Swirling, orbiting, ideas racing, accompanied by surges of fear. Being there, in the house on the hill, was so surreal, so removed from reality. We withdrew literally up above the roads beyond the signpost, reachable only by satellite. As you slept next to me, I crawled into myself. I didn't understand then, in the psychiatric downward spiral of a come down, that contradictory realities could be true at the same time. Your presence soothed every part of me. I wanted you with a fierce selfishness, but in my heart of hearts, I knew there was nothing sustainable about how we existed the moment we deviated from the highway below. During the week when we weren't together, this inner knowing, coupled along with my aloneness, into a powerful loneliness. Okay, I'm going to pause. Okay. So, first thing I'm noting here. This line is a little bit long. Now, I read it well, perhaps because the punctuation's working for it, but I'm going to note that it's long. And then I went from noting the long sentence into this one, and I'm a little stuck because aloneness and loneliness are, I feel like they're synonyms for one another. If I was to look them up, I'm going to guess they are the same thing. So I'm missing something because they mean the same thing. So during the week when we weren't together, this inner knowing coupled with I just kind of wanted to say, I kind of wanted to take that. Let me just try this. Let's say this isn't here for a second. This blue highlighted section, which is my aloneness into a powerful. Let's just say that it's not there. During the week when we weren't together, this inner knowing coupled with my loneliness. I believe I was dying inside, and I barely cared. I was too scared to make a change, any change. While I lay there that night, shame thriving inside of me, breathing fast and ineffectively through the come down, I knew I'd never deserve you. In that moment, jaw grinding, I was so full of love and so full of doom, both existing simultaneously. Okay, so we got a couple adverbs in this paragraph. They're not deal breaking. I'm just going to note that I've observed them, and I did notice them while I was reading. So barely and ineffectively standing out to me. My suggestions here are going to be this. I want to draw your attention to the very long line, noting that when I did read it out loud, it read just fine. It could be fine because the punctuation's working for it. Then in the next line, I am a little bit either, I guess, confused because we have aloneness and loneliness together, meaning the same thing. And so I kind of would like to draw your attention to this line and ask you to toy with it a little bit. Then on the next line, I believed I was dying inside and I barely cared. I was too scared to make a change, any change. Okay, so if we're on a come down, we're not exactly rational. So we're probably, how much weight can we put on our decisions? We probably shouldn't be making any at that time, but we obviously never believed that. So I'm just, it could be working for the context it's in, but at the same time, I'm like, what was it you were scared of? What was it you were scared of? Maybe it's the sensation of fear. Okay, let me explain that. We consider some fears not to be rational, meaning having context. Okay, so like nothing's happened, but we're coming down off this high and we don't like how we feel. And maybe there's a little bit of panic and fear associated with that. We don't want it to end. We don't want to change anything. Is that what you mean? I believed I was dying inside and I barely cared. So you're so uncomfortable. What does that feel like? What was that? You're giving me your internal thought, but what was the physical sensation? Do we have that? Your presence soothed every part of me. I wanted you with a fierce selfishness, but in my heart of hearts, I knew there was nothing sustainable about how we existed the moment we deviated from the highway below. During the week when we weren't together, this inner knowing coupled with my aloneness into a powerful loneliness. I believed I was dying inside and I barely cared. I was too scared to make a change, any change. While I lay there that night, I think we need a comma here between night and shame. Yep, and it's suggesting the same thing. I'm just going to point it out. I think if it does, there we go. Let's do that. Shame thriving inside of me, breathing fast and ineffectively through the come down. I knew I'd never deserve you. Okay, so first of all, what? You didn't deserve him. You were doing these things with him. So how on earth could you possibly not deserve him when you're both in the same kind of space? You're both doing the same things together. And this is reader musing. These are reader questions. Me as a reader is like, I don't, no. Okay, no. I see you as equals. I don't understand why you don't feel worthy. Okay, I don't understand that. So as a reader, I do not understand that. And I'd be fussing at a book. If I was reading a book, I'd be fussing at the book right now. Okay. So I pointed out that and that down here, you're dying inside and you barely cared. It is the dying inside sensation. Is that direct with the come down? Is that related to the come down? And is this come down taking a couple of days? Because we get down here and Um, you're talking about during the week when you weren't together, okay? And then that kind of implies even when you're not together and not high, you are feeling this way. I'm a little confused by the timing here because we have mention of during the week here, right here. And then down here, you refer back to that night. So I kind of thought initially when I read this line right here, the I believed I was dying inside and barely cared. I kind of thought you were talking about that night and that you were so messed up that when you started to come down, you were having a sensation that you were dying. So a couple things. That was my thought process is in the timing of this line. And then I'm not sure of the timing because of the mention of during the week above it and then that night below it. So it's tucked in the middle. And so I'm not entirely sure where it fits chronologically. And the reason that I'm wondering that is also because I want to know what that feeling was. Okay, so if this feeling is directly related to coming down, what is the internal sensation that is tied to that? What does that feel like? And I kind of want it right before there. And then you add this internal thought of, I believe that my skin was crawling or I was nauseous or I kept dwindling in and out of consciousness. Whatever that internal sensation was, whatever it was, followed up with, I believed I was dying inside and I barely cared. Okay, so if this line is tied to a sensation, give me the sensation that binds it and make sure that I'm clear about what the timing is on it because the timing question is also confusing me. I guess because this line could mean multiple different things based on the timing of it. If it's tied to the come down, I need the visceral sensation that goes with it. If it is tied to during the week, we're not necessarily messed up, but we think we're dying inside, and that's a byproduct of the come down. Okay, like not a direct physical come down, but an ongoing as it leaves you, if that makes sense to you, sensation come down where we don't have some of the rational feelings because it's messed with our bodies. Does that make sense? Is it tied to that? If all these musings hopefully answer your questions because you're going to know the answers. I don't. And so I'm just kind of trying to put it in the correct context and I'm not sure I'm getting it correct if that's helpful. This could also be interpreted as I'm just really sad and I'm lonely like you mentioned here and I'm shriveling away inside. There's no point to me. Like, what is your internal, okay, you believe you're dying inside. If it's not a visceral reaction to a physical come down, but it's you're coming down and you're alone, you're feeling alone, this is a mental thought, but it seems without context. I think maybe because this line isn't working, it's not helping this line do what you want it to do. Yeah, maybe. Lots to process right there. But I know that based on what I'm piecing out and trying to rationalize out of it, you're going to get what you need to make it work the way you wanted it to, hopefully. Okay, so let's see where else we are. I was too scared to make any change. What were you scared of? I'm wondering, what were you scared of? While I lay there that night, shame thriving inside of me. I'm just going to assume the shame is related to the whole situation, all the drugs and all the stuff. Maybe you're disappointed in yourself. I'm guessing if I'm going with obvious, breathing fast and ineffectively through the come down. So here you are that night coming down. I knew I'd never deserve you. Talk about irrational thoughts. Because again, I just don't, you sound like you don't feel like you were worthy, but you were doing the exact same thing that he was doing. So that doesn't make, he's in no way, shape or form better than you. So as a reader, I'm frustrated for you. In that moment, jaw grinding, I was so full of love and so full of doom. I actually get this feeling completely without any explanation. I'm just like, I just get it. Okay. I can feel that way. I can feel all kinds of sorts of ways that contradict each other at the same time that are just a feeling in and of themselves and work for me even without context. So that would be one of them. I'm going to roll with that completely. I'm not going to touch it. both existing simultaneously. Exactly what I just said. Both of them happening, both of these conflicting feelings happening at the exact same time, making absolutely no sense, making us crazy just for feeling them and trying to rationalize it. Yeah, all the things, all the things. So then we get down here, we have a little break and we're going to continue. Saturday morning. Who's going to play with me? 6 in the morning, baby. I got a long, long day ahead of me. I playfully sang my rendition of the Eels, coaxing you to open your eyes as I did most every Saturday. I don't remember now if I'd actually fallen asleep, but I know we had plenty more. I can see us clinking our shot glasses together before taking that morning drink. Why am I getting... Oh, there's no mention of a drink here. Why? My brain kind of caught on an ink sound and I don't know. Oh, here it is. There it is. Clinking and drink. Okay. So that could just be my neurodivergent brain. I'm going to observe that there is a similar sound in the sentence. I don't see any need to change it, but my brain caught it and it got hung up and completely, it just kind of, what happens is it kind of just trips over itself and it's like, hold up, something back there was off. So it observed that. I'm going to note it just for if my brain tripped on it, I'm going to point it out. It doesn't necessarily mean anything at all. I'm going to try to read this again, observing why my brain tripped up on me, and we're going to keep going. I don't remember now if I'd actually fallen asleep, but I know we had plenty more. I can see us clinking our shot glasses together before taking that morning drink. Such creatures of habit and still too scared to make a change. It didn't occur to me that we didn't have to finish a bottle or a bag just because it wasn't empty. So here you are kind of realizing that he's in it with you. I mean, he's doing the same thing you're doing it together. So are you feeling like he was too scared too? And what change would you contemplate making? What change are you scared to make? These are my reader thoughts. I'm going to keep going. Eyes adjusting to the light, we made our way along the path to the gate in the chain link fence. You bent to pick up some eucalyptus seed pods from under the tree and held them out in your palm for me to smell with my weary nose. Okay, I kind of didn't want weary there. I'm guessing it's weary because it's been worn out. But, I'm not super excited about the adjective. You could do without it, but I kind of also want one there that kind of says that it's worn out. I kind of maybe want a different adjective that kind of implies this exactly what you're wanting. How odd. Why is my brain hung up on that? I don't know. I think that's a dumb thought. We have to poke fun at my brain sometimes, guys. We have to, because it even to me, it's weird. All right. It's weird. And so I'm going to note that my brain did not like that adjective. It wanted something different, but that also meant exactly what you wanted it to mean, and that I understood what you meant by it. So therefore I am deeming it dumb, and we're going to keep going. We paused when we got to the pond to split a smoke. Looking for the koi, I stared into the mirror reflection of acacia trees. They had been so thick with bright bursts of cheer a few months before. All that was left on the spring pollen pooled in yellow flecks, making murky swirls on the water. I always had my eye out for the resident heron around there, although more often he was hunting gophers in the tall grass. Want to complete the loop or go to the windmill? We haven't done that in a while, you offered. I agreed, though it was quickly decided you'd drive down to the base of the structure, as if you had any business operating a vehicle. With the back seat of the car folded down, we made a cozy area to lounge under the windmill. You were noticing huge turkey feathers, here and there, and then enough to convince us there was probably an attack. They were beautiful, and following the wind collecting them seemed as good an idea as any for how high we are. Okay, and following the wind they were beautiful, and following the wind. My suggestion right here would be to collect them. I kind of get collecting them because you're active. They were beautiful. And following the wind to collect them seemed as good an idea as any for how high we were. I think to collect would work better for it. I had to keep reading to get the context correct. And so I did not have the correct context initially. I was still trying to figure out what it was. Um, I think when I got to this point is when I got the complete picture. And I think you wanted a little sooner to get the context correct. They were beautiful, and following the wind to collect them seemed as good an idea as any for how high we were. I think would work better for you. And so we inhaled the last of the off your iPad in the back of the car and then strolled off following feathers across the hillside. Okay, first of all, I'm not condoning anything you did, but I love what the sentence says you did. I totally get the random thought, let's just go do that. It looks really cool. That's really pretty. Let's just go. Yeah, spontaneous, nonsensical thing that you did together. There, you started your sentence with "and," which is it's a thing for some people. I personally do it sometimes, so and you do it sparingly, so I think it's fine, except for the fact that we have a second "and" further in here, and that's when it starts to kind of irk me a little bit. I wonder if we drop the "and" off the front, if it'll work better, and I'm going to read it that way, and then we're just going to move on, and you can decide whether or not you want to do anything with it at all. Let's see. I'm going to go back to the line before it to give it a smoother flow. They were beautiful, and following the wind to collect them seemed as good an idea as any for how high we were. So we inhaled the last of the off your iPad in the back of the car and then strolled off following feathers across the hillside. All right, I'm going to keep going. At some point, you captured a photo of me standing looking up. Okay, so you have two ing words right next to each other. Maybe let's take out standing and just see if it works without it. At some point, you captured a photo of me looking up. One of two photos. Okay, and you've got photo and photo. You could swap one for pic or like pics if you want that, or picture, just to use a different word for photo instead of having it in two consecutive sentences. At some point, you captured a pic of me standing up or looking up. I would pick one of the two. Let me commit, and so I can read it with flow. At some point, you captured a pic of me standing up. One of two photos from that weekend. It's a side profile, and I have my hands around my eyes like binoculars. Braless in a white tank top, the migration of birds from my rib tattoo fly up my right shoulder, just visible amongst my freckles. Barreling into the come down, it was just about 1 p.m. and time to transition to my beloved. Why don't we try to eat something first, you said in a voice of reason. How about some tater tots? I could never say no to tater tots, I smiled, our eyes meeting. Okay, really quick. I think we need space here between our paragraphs. Let's see. Gonna keep going. We've got a little bitty break here. It is laughable that I would alternate from hot to cold, cold to hot, in a complete inability to regulate my temperature sensation. You could probably omit the sensation and just go regulate my temperature. You could even say regulate my body temperature, but I don't think you need sensation. Air would catch at the back of my throat when I tried to swallow with such a dry mouth. My jaw wiggled from side to side, and suddenly I was too hot again. A flushing spread like fire over my face, and I knew what would happen next. I darted to your bathroom, barely dropping to my knees in time to lose it in the toilet. The draft from the high ceiling traced invisible patterns across my skin, and I shivered before getting sick again. The cold, I have personal shivers over these words, and so I'm not going to speak them to the universe. That's a personal thing for me. I have an actual phobia of that when it happens, so I'm just going to keep rolling. The cold of the tile was shocking. A wave of relief passed over me, and I stood up, thankful to have managed those tater tots before the... Brushing my teeth, I turned to face the shower so I wouldn't have to look at my giant, demonic black pupils piercing through the mirror. Okay, I'm just going to say I would omit through and just go piercing the mirror, okay? I find through in there a little distancing, and it's nice and tight without it. Sex on always felt like love, real love, but I remember thinking this couldn't be real life. All we had to show for the day was a stack of turkey feathers and some eucalyptus seed pods that you put in an abalone shell. The day turned into night and depleted when we fell. The day turned into night. I need a pause. The day turned into night and depleted. We fell asleep naked without dinner. do I need maybe a comma before the and to prompt me to the pause? Because and doesn't always give me that. Noting that I wanted to pause here and I misread it because there wasn't an indication that I should have one, if that makes sense. We're going to keep going. As a rule, to ensure a smooth transition into Monday morning and the work week, I used to abstain from alcohol on Sundays. At some point, maybe back in February or December, I'd crossed the line into daily drinking. We were conscientious to moderate, dubbing it semi-sober Sunday. On that August morning, we had to finish the lowering the bar yet again. With a 3-foot ladder placed in the corner of the front porch, you could easily climb onto the roof, extending the ocean views for miles. Waves rolled rhythmically into the rocks, mirroring back sunlight with an ethereal sheen. We arranged the foam mattress pads you'd hoisted up to face the lighthouse and invited the breeze to transverse the freckled topography. We're going to try that again. We arranged the foam mattress pads you'd hoisted up to face the lighthouse and invited the breeze to transverse the freckled Okay, I can't. Part of my brain is thinking it's not super long, but it's not super long, but there is an awkwardness to it. But I like what it says, so I'm conflicted. I'm going to try yet again to read it correctly, and I'm going to note that I have tripped over it 3 times, and you take it for what you will. Because I do like what you're saying, and I like the visual, as always, that you're painting, but I am tripping over it. And I could break that apart and try to figure out why, but I like what it says, so I'm not going to. We arranged the foam mattress pads you'd hoisted up to face the lighthouse and invited the breeze to transverse the freckled topography of our skin. I think it might be just as fleeting. I know I said I'd let it go, but I think it might be the 2 multisyllable T words so close together, transverse and topography. That might be what's happening there. And I'm absolutely not suggesting that you change anything because I liked it, but I am noting that I did struggle with it. And when I do that, it irks me and I want to know why. Okay. Sensational and sensual and coming to an end as it would soon be time for me to drive home. Sensational and sensual coming to an end as it would soon be time for me to drive home. I'm guessing you did these on purpose, so I'm just gonna let it go. And I kind of liked the rhythm of it, but then I got awkward right here, and I know which words it is. It's would soon be, because usually when we speak, we would say would be soon, and so that is exactly why the brain tripped over that. If I'm reading it silently to myself, I don't think I'd trip over it, but I also don't know if it's a complete sentence for me. I don't know if it is. Sensational and sensual and coming to an end as it would soon be time for me to drive home. What is sensational and sensual and coming to an end? Well, it's this whole foray. So you might want to say that to give it full context. And I would also just like to draw your attention to the would soon be and the would be soon kind of thing. As I hate to say clunky, but at the same time it's about how it's spoken, I think is why. It may not bother everyone. It could just be me. So I'm going to keep going. Wrapped in your arms, dancing slowly to a fast song, I felt the wet warmth of tears soak my eyes, threatening to run down my cheek. Okay. So we're going to look at this one for a second. We are, let's see. Wrapped in your arms, dancing slowly to a fast song. I felt the wet warmth of tears soak my eyes, threatening to run down my cheek. Okay. So a couple things. One, I don't want you to say I felt, if you can avoid it. I do like you dancing slow to a fast song, even though it's an adverb. But I do like the visual it gives you. You're dancing slow, but the song is fast. So it just shows how out of sorts you all are. And I get the emotions are rising up inside you. I'm not super fond of the pairing of wet warmth. I typically lean on moist heat of tears or blurry or something that is, what it could be fine. It might be it might be the feeling the eye felt and wet warmth paired together not working for me. They soak my eyes, and they fill your eyes and they soak your cheeks. So, and also it could just be tears tears were welling in your eyes, and it might be too wordy. Something is not working about it. And there's a couple of things that were standing out to me that I kind of pointed out. And I think paired together is not helping it. Wrapped in your arms, dancing slow. Maybe you don't have to say slowly. Okay. Wrapped in your arms, dancing slow to a fast song. Tears filled my eyes, threatening to run down my cheeks. Maybe if we simplify it like that. I want it to be in your voice, though, so I'm going to stop making a suggestion and just tell you I would rework it a little bit. And we're going to go with that. I didn't want to go home. Saying goodbye was becoming more and more painful each week. I hated myself when I wasn't with you. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Reader feelings, huge reader feelings. So you get together, do all these things that are not good for you and not productive and completely escapist. You're absolutely totally in love with him. But it's this thing that you do together. And he's partaking with you. He's completely right there, side by side, doing it together. I don't have any opinions. I'm just kind of like, how? You hate yourself or you hate your life when you're not doing that? Which one was it? I'm just, so many questions. Okay. Gonna focus. Professional attire was required at my work. It felt so inauthentic to button up a blazer, smile on cue, and say I'm fine when I was any number of things, but definitely not fine. The phones rang and people shuffled past the desk. I looked up to exchange pleasantries, but I had this pain behind my sternum like a clenched fist, and it was hard to concentrate on the noisy words that reached my ears. That's a little bit long. I read it just fine. It's long. I'm going to note it's long, and we're going to keep going. And I'm going to note that I have found smatterings of adverbs kind of sprinkled throughout this entire letter, so we're going to observe that as well. I'd barely been on the clock an hour, and I remember being tactful to complain about my chest with some exaggeration for sale, if my colleague would buy it. I'm not sure what's going on with me, but I'm really not feeling well, I told the director, having bypassed my manager. Could it be a hangover? Did you have too much to drink yesterday? She asked, catching me completely off guard. In a confusing state of shock, heat spread over my face, and I was frantic to redirect her thoughts. No way. No. I haven't even drank since Saturday because I had to drive yesterday. I think I'm getting sick. I quickly lied, as if she couldn't smell alcohol emanating through my pores. Oh my gosh, so you're like detoxing, and they are totally seeing right through you, and you feel seen. Again, adverb here. We've got adverb here. They're kind of sprinkled throughout here. You could probably screen just for adverbs, which I would probably do with there being this many. Could it be a hangover? Did you have too much to drink yesterday? She asked, catching me. You got completely, yeah, so you've got one here. I'm pointing them out to you, and I think I'm going to go ahead and say you should probably take a peek at them, because your voice and your writing is typically so strong that I don't usually notice this many. And I almost wanted this to be confused. In a confused state of shock, heat spread over my face, and I was frantic to redirect her thoughts. Yeah. Okay, we're going to keep going. I went home, delaying additional questions or consequences from work. By early afternoon, the bright idea hit that I should call in for tomorrow too. No! No! Oh my gosh, no. Oh my gosh, no. Okay, huge reader. That was all reader impression. No. No! No, you should not call into work again the next day. No. They're already mentioning to you that they think you might be drunk, and you're not even just drunk. You're other things too, which means you're being seen. And then you're literally saying that you're sure they can smell your detox. No, no, you should not call in again. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. All right. All right, we're going to keep going. Going to keep going. Oh, okay, we're going to try this again without me being all brain interjecting. I went home, delaying additional questions or consequences from work. By early afternoon, the bright idea hit that I should call in for tomorrow, too. Who's really sick for just one day? It would be more believable to say two. I texted something about the flu and antibiotics, and they called my bluff. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your job. Oh no, 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 no. You'll need to send me a copy of the doctor's note, my manager informed me. These words might as well have been a tsunami warning. Alarms blaring to get to high ground. Doom weighed me down, and I knew I couldn't keep this up. I contemplated going to doctors on duty. I hadn't much to drink at that point, only a half pint, and was out of Klonopin. I climbed the stairs up to the deck of my treehouse, careful not to brush the railing where the rose vine sprawled over, reaching for my clothes like claw-like thorns. I exhaled. I knew I couldn't go to the doctor today. Tomorrow, I devised to stand in line at the clinic first thing in the morning, and what to do about the empty half pint. Okay, so Grammarly is flagging devised. It suggests decided. I kind of agree with it. I was going to say devised didn't seem fitting, so I'm going to go with that suggestion. I'm just noting it, and we're going to keep going. Your voice on the other line of the phone assured me you weren't feeling good either. We went too hard. Again. Back in April, we had so much fun when we were sober and traveled up to Mendocino. We even strung together some 60-plus days. We got to pump the brakes. We've been talking about it, you rallied. Yes, I need to quit. It's the alcohol. I can't do it anymore. I heard those words coming out of my mouth in agreement as I made my way back down the treehouse steps to pace the yard. But I didn't know my last drink would be my last. I didn't savor it with a goodbye, no ritual, no final hooray. This thought overpowered my words, followed by my warm, salty tears. I'm going to pause for a second. So, random reader thought. Interesting that you're like, I didn't know my last drink would be my last. Not related to drinking, but also related to not knowing when something will be your last. There's so many things that we take for granted that they'll be the last time because we don't know it's the last time. Not always. I mean, sometimes you do know it's going to be the last time. Maybe you have that last drink and you decide, I'm not doing that again. And you put it down and never pick it back up. I mean, that could happen. And for some people it does. But there's other things, sweet things that happen that are happening for the last time. And you never know that it's the last time until you look back one day and you're like, I don't know when the last time was. Like one day your babies get too big for you to hold anymore. And you don't remember when the last time was that you picked them up. But there was a last time that you picked them up. Anyway, random reader thought that was prompted by this whole last time thing. We're going to keep going. The television was on in my parents' sunroom, but my dad was nowhere to be seen. They had recently gathered and moved all the household alcohol from the kitchen to a box on the floor of my dad's closet. With the door slit open, I sat before the glass bottles admiringly on the floor. Adverb. What you might do, and what I recently did, also related to alcohol and glass bottles, was observe the different shapes and patterns, how pretty they are, how they're meant to draw our attention, to draw us to them, to prefer one because it's pretty, or even the colors of the liquor. So when instead of saying admiringly, you have an opportunity here to observe them And what do you see when you're observing them that kind of builds that sensation of desire? Just saying, there's an opportunity there for something stronger than admiringly. We're going to keep going. I took a gulp of my mom's bourbon because it was closest to my whiskey vice. Yes, tomorrow I will quit. It's time, I promised myself. This knowledge contributed to the closure I craved, and I took another sip, shaking my head without a chaser. I made a few phone calls and then lay with my head at the foot of my bed, looking at the wooden headboard. My memory thinks back to a man that was in the morning AA meetings. Okay, my memory thinks back. I give pause to that. I'm not fond of the word back. I'm using back. I think it's distancing. And when you say my memory thinks, well, our memory is thought, so I don't know if the combination is working for me. My thoughts drift to a man that was in the morning AA meetings. That's just a suggestion. Obviously, you want something attuned to your voice that says what you want, so I'm just going to move on. He jumped in first and shared the same thing every day, wrapping up with the words, Alcoholics Anonymous is the best recycling program on earth. I thought I was of the hopeless variety, and AA gave me hope. Those rooms, they were full of people that thought they knew hopelessness. It was a crushing blow to admit I didn't believe I could stop. What had worked for them wouldn't work in my case. I was different, 32 and too far gone. Hope eluded me, the drugs, the dead-end job, the web of lies, living at home with my parents, drinking away consciousness. The last of my memories walked me back to the floor of the hallway in front of the closet. At that point, I was drinking a little here and a little there so the bottles wouldn't look so obviously depleted. Some Grey Goose with its insulting smell, a swig of Tanqueray gin, and finally another gulp of Jim Beam. Okay, I think it's Beam. I feel like it's Beam. I was a whiskey drinker, so I feel like it's Jim Beam. Do 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 do. And it is Kentucky bourbon. Okay, gonna keep going. Oblivion, full speed ahead. With a long blink into consciousness. Okay, I'm gonna note, I feel like we've had consciousness multiple times. Yep, here it is again, and here it is again. So I'm just gonna note that you have a word echo on consciousness, and we're gonna keep going. With a long blink into consciousness, the circled driveway of my childhood home came into focus. From the brick steps, I was surprised to see my dad standing under the oak tree talking to a sheriff. What the is going on? Moments of awareness were piecemeal, and of those pieces, only fragments are memories. With a blood alcohol level of 0.38, the memories are unreliable at best. I implant the image of a fire engine on the scene, parked in front of the sheriff's vehicle, 4 responders standing by. Digging my hands into the pockets of my pink corduroy shorts, I exhaled sharply. I exhale. Okay, so this is present tense, but I think we're in past tense as you go. So I think that might be exhaled. I'm going to try it again. Digging my hands into the pockets of my pink corduroy shorts, I exhaled sharply, agitated to be so confused. And I'm agitated now to fact-check my memory regarding the red fire truck. As luck would have it, it was an ambulance. Are you suicidal, ma'am? The sheriff addressed me from a distance. I don't actually remember responding, but with another heavy blink, suddenly the sheriff was sitting across from me at my parents' circling dining table. My mother must have been mortified. The sheriff expressed concern for my welfare and mental health. Who is concerned? I'm drunk, not suicidal, I said defensively. This is none of your business. Also, I'm probably going to get flagged at YouTube because I'm saying that word, so I'm going to stop saying it before I get in trouble. I wish the world wasn't so censored, but at the same time, I understand why it needs to be. He slid a clipboard toward me with a few lines filled out in black ink. The sloppy handwriting detailed that the psychiatrist nurse ordered a welfare check after I called demanding refills of my Klonopin. Apparently, I sassed her, and the sheriff didn't care much for my attitude either. It's such a baffling feeling to come to in the middle of a blackout. To know your physical presence misleadingly represents coherence, but your memory is not recording data. I would frantically try to orient. Okay, so we've got adverbs. I'm conflicted in making suggestions because I don't want to mess with your voice. So maybe I'm going to withhold them if I can control myself. Just, yeah, I'm like, I don't want my brain to stop working. Sometimes if I disrupt the flow, it won't work for me. So at the same time, you could rephrase a couple things and not need these. Anyway, we're gonna keep going. There was an urgency to assimilate to the situation before anyone realized my vacancy. Were the memories buried in there somewhere? I used to wonder, imagining they. Okay, I kind of want this to be a question mark right here, and then to continue. And I'm going to read it like that just for a second. Were the memories buried in there somewhere? I used to wonder, imagining they would surface with time or clues. Evidence of my experience has since suggested otherwise. Against my will, I was ordered into the non-fire truck for an ambulance escort to the hospital. If intoxicated was the best word to describe me in that moment, disagreeable would have been a close second. My parents' house was located between two hospitals, and I preferred one with a snobby entitlement over the other. The driver turned right at the bridge, and I was livid to feel so unheard, en route to the wrong hospital. Not to mention, I desperately needed a cigarette. It's interesting. You're offended that your life has been intervened on for your best. So, but that's typically how it goes. So, again, noting desperately here. Also, I kind of actually like. I love this on the end of this paragraph. It's so fitting. Good job. So basically, you kind of remembered it as the fire truck, but it turned out it was an ambulance. And so, am I to gather this correctly? The pharmacist is the one who did this? Okay, the sloppy handwriting detailed that the psychiatrist nurse. Okay, so you have a psychiatrist who was ordering your Klonopin, and she ordered it. Okay, that makes sense. I'm like, I don't see them just coming for a pharmacist call, but the psychiatrist, they would. If the psychiatrist ordered it, they would. Absolutely. Okay, continuing. Like a broken record, I continued to ask to be transferred to the other hospital and for a smoke over the course of the following 12 hours. That's about the amount of time I was in the emergency department. With all the charm of an institution, it resembled a jail more than a medical center. The floors were cement and the walls painted cinder blocks. Okay, the little hyphen here, I think actually made me think walls painted was, I guess, hyphenated. I'm not really sure why the hyphen's there. Let me try reading it without it, imagining that they're separated and they're not linked at all. The floors were cement and the walls painted cinder blocks. There was a single gurney bed in the middle of the room and a tan plastic curtain that ran along a metal track, forming an illusion of privacy. Sitting on the bed, the focal point of the room, made me feel like a goldfish on display in its tank. It's suggesting this, and I was actually thinking the same thing. Will it pop up? Yes. Okay, we're gonna keep going. I was combative, self-centered, and blind to the big picture reality of my situation. And that nicotine patch didn't soothe my urge to inhale real smoke deep into my lungs. You've got 2 dots there, but I think 1 period would be just fine. Moving on. Angst raged through me. With fists clenched at my side, I continued to roll in and out of consciousness. Oh, there's another consciousness. Okay. I am not sure what to suggest for alternate words for consciousness. I'm just going to note it, and we're going to keep going. The stern nurse assigned to me couldn't have been much older than me. We have 2 me's in the same sentence. And we have another me above here. So I'm fine with there being more than 1 here, but not 3 this close together. I would probably try to reword this just a little bit so that there's only 1 me in it. Spewing spiteful comments in his direction, he was an easy scapegoat for my indignation. I felt hateful towards him, as if he alone could have facilitated my transfer request, or better yet, sent me home. Okay, so I like the way you're painting this out, but you're telling me. Your choice of words gives me your feeling. Okay, so but it's telling me you're feeling. It's not showing it to me. And I don't actually know if, given the situation, I'm not really sure. Okay. So you're not in rational thought anyway. I, I'm not fond of saying I felt. We all know that. And I'm gonna try to show you what I'm trying to say, and I may not have the answer exactly for you for a number of reasons. One being I don't want to touch your voice. I want you to do it on your own. But I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. Angst raged through me. Okay, this paragraph is telling, and I'm going to show you all the places that it's telling. Angst raged through me. This is action. With fists clenched at my side, I continued to roll in and out of consciousness. That's fine. The stern nurse assigned to me couldn't have been much older than me. That's fine. Spewing spiteful comments in his direction, he was an easy scapegoat for my indignation. So you're spewing comments. These are telling me what's happening. And then the next thing says, I felt hateful. So you've told me how you feel rather than show me how you feel towards him, as if he alone could have facilitated my transfer request, or better yet, sent me home. Okay, so I like this part. All right, I don't like the I felt. What I like is you've got vitriol towards this person as if he could fix your problems, but really he doesn't even have that power. He's just trying to do his job. So I wonder, I am not sure that I have suggestions, but I feel that you're telling me that it's fine to tell action. So the stern nurse assigned to me couldn't have been, that's fine. You're observing that. That's almost, it's an internal observation. It's fine. I think, what does this angst rage through you? Angst raged through you. What does that feel like? All right. Then you have your action. With fists clenched at my side, I continued to roll in and out of consciousness. This is perfectly fine. The stern nurse assigned to me couldn't have been much older than me. Perfectly fine. Now we get into spewing spiteful comments. So I don't know if you remember what those spiteful comments are. You might throw one in there. Because you're saying he's an easy scapegoat for your indignation. I don't know if maybe it was all working. And maybe it's working with the exception of angst raged through me, because that's telling. And I felt hateful towards him, because that's distancing. But I like the framework. Does that make sense? Like, I like there's components I like, and then there's a couple things here and there that aren't helping. It's not keeping me close to you in this scene. I'm a kind of an observer, but I'm not experiencing it. I'm not caught up in the emotion of it. It's like I'm watching it, but I'm not feeling it, because you're telling me. You're not immersing me. I'm not sure if any of that is helpful, because I'm also not giving you the answer. And I'm going to leave those musings for you. If you need any help from me, I know you will reach out for it. Otherwise, I hope that I'm pointing you in the right direction there. We're going to move on. My urine revealed traces of this, and this. Of course, none of this came as a surprise. What I wasn't expecting, however, was to be transferred from the emergency department to the locked inpatient psychiatric center for mandatory hold. At this point, the alcohol was wearing off, and my former cheeky conviction turned to a silent fear that was slowly grasping the gravity of the situation. I can't put words to the feeling of stepping out of the elevator escorted by 2 nurses into that small room. They asked me to undress and stand behind a thin screen. Tears welling, I managed to step forward. You have with there, it's fine. I just read it more passionately by omitting the with and just saying tears welling. I managed to step forward. The click of the camera made me jump as they collected photo documentation of my arms, ribs, and legs. I silently left my body when they instructed me to bend forward and put my hands on my knees. In what remains of the single most pitiful moments of my life, was this really necessary? Okay, excellent writing in this paragraph. Excellent writing in this paragraph. You're painting out the picture that I know to be very true. At this point, the alcohol was wearing off and formerly cheeky convictions. So you're gradually starting to be like, I don't get to just leave. I'm not, this is going to go on for a while. You know what? It might even be good to tuck those sort of thoughts, if you had them in here, like literally your mental thought at that kind of progression of the moment where you realized, oh, yeah, I'm out of control of my life here. Yeah. I don't get to just choose anything. Oh no, this is going to last a little bit longer than what I'm already willing to put up with. You know, just some of those thoughts interjected here and there. Well, I think just like, was this necessary? That same sort of thing, because you've got a situation. This is an action scene for you. You have things unfolding, and we don't have a lot of feeling type thoughts in action scenes. What we have is the kind of thoughts I already kind of presented to you, and they still lend themselves to the emotions that go with a high impact and action. What is ultimately going to have an emotional impact on your life. This is an action scene for you. And so we don't tend to have the beautiful words coming together to build that emotional feel. What we have is the action is giving us that. And then when we tuck our internal thoughts in amongst it, it delivers the full package. Not a whole lot, almost as subtly as you had, was this really necessary? But at a moment, like you're seeing, you're slowly grasping the gravity of the situation. And you have silent fear. Somewhere in here, there's an internal thought, an aha moment of, oh, I'm looking at the doors closed and I can't just open it. I'm going to be here a while. This sucks. You know, something that simple. See how they're not, the thoughts examples that I give you are not, they're not beautiful. They're not emotional. But when you take them and you tuck them in amongst your action, they have impact. Like when I felt this, I could exclaim, I could hear this screaming in my head as you're giving me this. Okay. I'm feeling this for you. I'm like, oh, the indignity. Okay. Is it really necessary? We all know that it is, and we know why, but that's the feeling. And there's a feeling of helplessness too. So I'm wondering, and honestly, I kind of look for the spots where the adverbs are to see if there isn't either a stronger verb, like you've got slowly and silently, and I almost wonder if you had the thought somewhere tucked around there, if it doesn't do the job. Let this verb stand stronger on its own and still do the building impact for you. I don't know. Those are all thoughts. Lots of thoughts there. Lots of options. Lots to work with. We're going to keep going. One of the nurses scanned her lanyard badge against a box fastened to the wall. A voice came through, confirming they were ready for me. With that, the door opened, and I was ushered into... should this be into, like, altogether into? I'm not really sure. I think maybe into... I think it is. I'm just going to suggest that. Into complete... into complete. Got it. Okay. Oh, well, you know what? Go away. How do you make it? There we go. With that, the door opened and I was ushered in to complete the duration of a 72-hour hold per the state of California. How about this? Inside, I was ushered inside or ushered through. Inside or through, perhaps, maybe. Inside or through, maybe. We're just going to leave that. To complete the duration of a 72-hour hold per the state of California. In a coroner office, a doctor with a good sense of humor asked me to hold out my hands. Well, they aren't trembling, he noted with a hint of surprise. Apparently, we met last night in the ED, but I didn't have any recollection of this. You know, a .38 is pretty dangerous. That could be fatal. How do you feel? He focused on me expectantly through big brown eyes. Okay. I'm just going to point out the adverb and I'm going to keep rolling because you will figure it out. You will figure it out. He focused on me through big brown eyes. Fine. Anxious, I guess. I'd be more comfortable at home, I managed. Oh, honey. Oh, honey. Okay. I kind of want fine to be like a statement because you know how you're like not wanting to talk a whole lot, but you know you're about to have to talk a whole lot or you're going to be prompted to talk a whole lot. So you just don't want to, and that kind of gives you the one-word answers. Fine. Anxious, I guess. So I almost wanted that to be a period and that to be a capital A, but we're going to keep rolling. Do you know why you're here? I got sassy with the sheriff. I deflected, catching him off guard. A change of energy penetrated the room as he laughed. You had a lot of substances in your system. I can't help but agree this is a good spot for you to be right now. I kind of want that to be a period. Just a suggestion. He expressed, still chuckling. All right, do we have him chuckling up here or do we have him laughing? Good, 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 good. You have laughing and then chuckling, just fine. You know, I'm surprised you aren't experiencing withdrawals. I'm sure I've been this drunk before, but no one obtained my blood alcohol level. I had the sense to at least filter this thought from exiting my mouth. Okay, I had the sense to at least filter this thought from exiting my mouth. The way you drink, I'd expect you to detox. You're lucky to be alive. He smiled kindly. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second. This is just a doctor, and so like the people that you're close to, you tend to give like a really great description of what they look like. A very creative description. So I don't know if you could just say he smiled. You've not really given me a visual of him, but he's a doctor. He's not like a person that you're going to spend a whole terrible lot of time with. He doesn't mean anything really to you. It's just he's there and he's performing this role. It's the adverb for me. So I'm just going to note it and we're going to keep going. This information landed on me with a crushing weight. I felt anything but lucky. Honestly, my lack of enthusiasm to exist was met with a healthy dose of fear. So far removed from how I thought of myself, I was truly afraid of this monster I'd become. I was equally afraid at the start of each new day. While I wasn't actively suicidal, I was often disappointed to wake up in the morning. The thought of drifting off in my sleep sounded like the ideal solution to my perceived problems. Kneeling at the foot of one of the two twin-sized beds, I sobbed quietly in the face of my realization. 32 years old, and I couldn't not drink. So I highlighted some adverbs as I was reading, and then I kind of thought you're often disappointed to wake up in the morning, and the thought of drifting off in your sleep sounded like the ideal solution to your perceived problems. What are your perceived problems? So I guess living with your parents, and I'm guessing you're like living with your parents and you're doing all this drinking and you're doing all these drugs, and at the same time your mom's drinking and your dad's not doing anything about anything. So it just seems like the acceptable environment to be doing it in, I guess, you know, if you're doing as everyone else is doing. So I don't know, but I'm just wondering if you could identify your problems. And maybe then you couldn't. What is it when you woke up in the morning and you're disappointed? Okay. What is the first thought that pops in your head that makes you feel disappointed? What are these problems that are piling up on you? Let your mind release them here. Oh, I have to go to work. I hate my job. I have nothing to look forward to. What were your thoughts? See what I'm saying? I'm just trying to name off some thoughts. What are they? They don't have to be long, but you can let them pile up, and then they're supported by everything that's happening. Okay? We're going to keep going. There was a dark-haired boy pacing the hall and someone else yelling out of sight. This wasn't my first time in a behavioral health unit, but it had more patients and more high risk individuals, which made me very uneasy. If you want to be released, you need to participate in the focus groups, take prescribed medications, exhibit good hygiene, and attend AA meetings, my nurse explained. When we see you participating, we make note that you are willingly putting effort into your health. Don't I get to leave at 72 hours? I demanded. Not unless you've demonstrated improvement. We can extend your hold, she went on stringently. So you're leaning on an adverb there. You could describe her anything to imply this. What does she do with her hands? What does she do with her body? What does she do? What is her body language? What is the if what is the purse of her lips? Is she frowny? Is she scowly? Is she mean? What is her attitude there? Just days ago, I was chasing turkey feathers across your hillside, breathing in the coastal air. Now, confined and hopeless, everything about our weekend felt like a far-off dream. I tried to call you from the single landline in the common area, but was soon interrupted by the deranged yells of my new roommate. She was in a green and yellow windbreaker with long black hair falling over her face. Her hair obscured other facial details, and I honestly wasn't looking very hard, cautious to avoid inviting any more trouble. Okay, so I'm identifying honestly there, and I think we have an extra space right there. Introduced to alcoholic and why? Why would my mouth not say that? Why? Okay, we're gonna try that again, folks. Let's try it again. Introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous a few years before, I had a sporadic track record of attending meetings. I even got a big book, which I proceeded to highlight and annotate in a blackout. My sloppy, drunken handwriting made me cringe, so I recycled it with no intention of reading. Your mom took you to your first AA meeting back in March, after our St. Patrick's Day bender torpedoed your depression. When we were reunited that following Saturday, we attended our first of a few weeks' worth of meetings. There was a lot of high power and self-love BS. It seemed like a cult replacing one addiction for this cheesy silver lining sobriety path. Needless to say, I thought it wasn't for me. By now it was Wednesday night, and members of AA were scheduled to host a meeting in the group room. The cowboy's skin was so weathered he appeared older, though I suspected he was only in his late 50s. The distinguishable smell of Marlboro Reds followed him into the room. A few minutes later, his volunteer counterpart hobbled in wearing leather motorcycle gear and carrying a helmet. I listened from across the table, my eyes concentrating on my hands in my lap. Okay. I don't want you to say my eyes concentrating on. My gaze fixed, or my gaze something. Since we don't see our own eyes, I tend not to, in first person, I tend not to say my eyes. I would more say my gaze, because you're looking through your eyes, if that makes any sense. That's just, my gaze landed on, or my gaze was, my gaze fixed on my, I tend to use gaze instead of eyes. I think that's a personal thing. So we're just going to keep going. They both detailed their drinking careers, the consequences that ensued, and their inability to stop in the face of those aforementioned repercussions. The cowboy had been in and out of this same hospital with kidney and liver failure, but would return home only to down another bottle. There was a pain inside of me that they clearly understood, because they both spoke to it, holding space for the grief it caused. Relieved that my roommate was in some crisis of her own, leaving our assigned space empty, I took to the floor again. Your roommate. I'm going to pause. I was like, I thought you were living with your parents, but now I'm realizing you're talking about your roommate while you're inpatient. My bad. Going to read that again. Relieved that my roommate was in some crisis of her own, leaving our assigned space empty, I took to the floor again. Kneeling in the same spot I had earlier, too serious to appreciate the irony of my position, I pondered how I had been terrified to be here, trapped like an animal. Now, almost 72 hours later, I was scared only to leave. I would just say scared to leave and take out the only. An overwhelming sense of safety enveloped me being here, separated from any form of alcohol. I didn't want to drink anymore. I didn't want to be this person I had become, and I didn't want to lose you. What would prevent me from my next sip of whiskey once back in the real world? I really couldn't tell you, but I will say the day I was admitted to the local emergency department by ambulance was August 26, 2019, and I haven't had a drink since. I think about that cowboy and motorcycle rider from time to time and how they reached me when no one else could, and ultimately, unknowingly, saved my life. Okay, so I like this closing paragraph. However, I kind of want okay, we go back here and you talk about the cowboy's skin was so weathered he appeared older, though I suspected he was only in his late 50s. The distinguishable smell of Marlboro Reds followed him into the room. A few minutes later, okay, so this character is important. This man is important. Something he said resonated with you. Do you remember what that was? Do you remember what it was? Because I don't think you've said it, have you? I mean, he told his story, but I'm getting high level as the reader. I kind of want to feel the impact of what he had to say. Let's see. The distinguishable smell of Marlboro Reds followed him into the room. A few minutes later, his volunteer counterpart hobbled in wearing leather motorcycle gear and carrying a helmet. I listened from across the table, my eyes concentrating on my hands in my lap. They both detailed their drinking careers, the consequences that ensued, and their inability to stop in the face of those aforementioned repercussions. The cowboy had been in and out of the same hospital with kidney and liver failure, but would return home only to down another bottle. There was a pain inside of me that they clearly understood because they both spoke to it, holding space for the grief it caused. Okay, so you've told us that he's detailed his drinking career. He's detailed the consequences. He's detailed an inability to stop. He's out of control. And the repercussions. And that he'd been in and out of the own hospital, only to go home and do it again. What for him made him stop? What for him pivoted his journey so that he was standing before you? And then what did he say to you? Or what did he say? And it could have been answering one of the questions I just laid out. But whatever it was, if you can remember it, share it. And then I think it's going to bring this even more poignant. There was a pain inside of me they clearly understood. I kind of want your reader to understand that pain too. And because you're relatable, like through all the journey, through all the things that happen, anybody that else has been through them is going to feel really close to them. But whatever it was that he said, I hope that you remember, and I hope you can tuck it in here. Relieved that my roommate was in some crisis of her own, leaving our assigned space empty, I took to the floor again. Kneeling in the same spot I had earlier, too serious to appreciate the irony of my position, I pondered how I had been terrified to be here, trapped like an animal. I think if you tuck the internal thoughts back in the earlier part of the chapter where I kind of suggested where you kind of got that sensation of, oh, I don't get to just choose when I'm leaving. I'm going to be here a while. Oh, I just, that icky feeling inside you that just makes you want to panic. I can't leave whenever I want. I'm out of control. I can't leave whenever I want. Those kind of thoughts tucked in earlier is going to support this line and make it stand out more here. I don't want you to tuck them here. I'm just saying when you come to this line, after tucking those thoughts in the chapter earlier, this line is going to have much more impact. It's going to have much more feel behind it. Now, almost 72 hours later, I was scared to leave. I get that. And I kind of was thinking it when I was reading it, that how it's flip-flopped for you. And this line is the most important one because this is exactly why it's flip-flopped. Now you got to go back out in the real world and you have to face the fact that you might lose him because you no longer partake with him. Okay. All right. Oh, this one was longer. So observing how much, a little bit of contrast there that this was a much longer chapter than the one to Dad. So, which is an interesting, I just want to observe that. And this was really good. I like what happened. I like how you laid it out. I'd look at the adverbs. There was a couple sentences here and there that I suggested you take a peek at, but overall, we're still rolling right along. I like how you're painting out your journey, how you're setting it, how you've laid it out. I'm still with you in the chronological release of information that we discussed privately. So, all right, I am going to stop here because we're next going to do chapter 10. And so, thank you to everyone who's joined us. If anyone's considering asking me for a read, please know that I do read first chapters for free. And each chapter after, I will do each chapter for a coffee. And there is a link to buy me a coffee in my profile. So I want to thank everyone for their support, and I'll see you guys next time on Mystery Road Reads.